The Garmin navigation is set, the baby wipes are aplenty, and the jumper cables are clamped to Jake's nipples. It's time to take the high road.
Some of them have been really good. That was one of
And?
my that one's probably one of my favorites
Yeah.
because that would hurt bad.
Do people still use Garmin? I know you were a big Garmin guy back in like the early 2000s or 2000-ishes.
It's funny that you say that because I did have a Garmin for my 99 Chevy Cavalier that had roll windows, so it didn't have GPS, obviously. But so I had it mounted on my dash and was using it for GPS. But I feel like it would have died out. But I think some of the stuff that's keeping Garmin alive is it's surprisingly a lot of divers like using Garmin watches and athletes with the all the different Garmin styles. So I feel like there's things outside of just your dash GPS that Garmin was able to stay alive with. But I might actually, literally, I was looking last night at dive watches, and there's a pretty decent Garmin one that I might get that's not over $700.
All right, well, hey, we're back. Jake was off adventuring, and now he's back. So what do you want to do? You want to talk about it?
Well, I'm back to the mainland, you know. I guess I'm glad to be home and relaxing and just kind of in my own place, own space. But yeah, it was a good trip. I finished up getting out of Guam, found a midnight flight out of Guam on Thursday night of last week and was able to get to Hawaii, and then I hung out there for a few days. And then of course, my luck, no flights on a Honolulu that were convenient for getting out of there. So I was like, you know what, I'll stay for the weekend, hung out, and I end up going to a hike with some friends on Oahu. My friend Omi, her boyfriend Jason, and Jen, and we did it. I lived on island for 3 years, and I never did the Makapu Lighthouse Trail. And the touristy trail is all paved, and you just walk up to the lighthouse, and nothing that fancy. It's got a good view, but it's like nothing that's rugged. I mean, you got kids, 3-year-olds in Crocs that are able to hike up it, so not too challenging. But halfway up the paved paths up to the lighthouse, you can break off. You can start climbing down the rocks and like kind of go down to some tide pools and check it out. And a lot of the tourists will just go to that first spot straight down, and just there's a couple small ones there. But Omi and Jason and her friend Jen like know about the secret tide pools. So we walked about another hour hike across the shoreline and lava rock, and wasn't too treacherous. It's just been a while since I did a hike like that. It took us about an hour to get in, but then we found some really cool tide pools and jumped in the water and kind of just hung out and took photos. And Omi's boyfriend Jason has a drone and waterproof those 360 cameras, and so he brought those out and got some cool footage. And I guess there's a trend now or a thing on the islands where women like buying mermaid tails, and then they go and to exotic pools or exotic like places on islands, take photos of being a mermaid. And it was pretty cool. It was actually, but like they're carrying like this bag with their tail and some other stuff, and I'm just cruising with my water bottle like, oh yeah, this is an easy hike. Then the two ladies that were with us had little backpacks with their mermaid gear. But yeah, if that's what they're into, I thought it was pretty cool. I looked like they got some cool videos with the drone, seeing them they like sit on the rocks right next to the tide pool, and then the drone would come up and get a zoom into them, and then just zoom out, and you just see the whole beautiful landscape. It was pretty cool. They got footage they put on Instagram. I was gonna try and send that to you and share some of Omi's photos on one of our Instagram posts. But you know, me and social media, I'm been pretty bad the last forever. So
yeah, you're really good at posting things.
well, I don't want to get. I hear that you got to post stuff like every day, at least every other day, and I don't really want us to get a lot of followers. So I figure we just post stuff once a week. That way we can keep the listeners under 50. You know what I mean?
No, it's working. Your game plan's working. It's working really well.
I just don't want a lot of attention. I don't want our podcast to get huge and explode and get super popular. I wanted to stay small and intimate, just our friends and our family and our friends of our friends and everyone I interview. I just want that small little pocket, you know?
Yeah, we're pretty close to like not being able to leave our own homes without paparazzi and all the camera footage and fans. It's tough. It's a tough life we have.
What I was thinking about maybe getting a security system and like just bumping up the security around here because I just feel like people are going to start getting stockish and want to like stalk me and sit out in front of my house, wait for me to leave. So yeah, I gotta upgrade.
Electric fence, big old wall, floodlights.
Yep,
All right.
landmines, whatever it takes.
How did your
Uh,
knees hold up on that hike?
if you're over 40 and you've been a little hard on your body, it might be a little rough. Most of us were. Omi, she's like, I got Motrin or ibuprofen if anyone needs any, and she was like offering it once we got down to the tide pool. It's like, no, I got an empty stomach, I'll hold off. But it was just funny how old people are prepared with sunblock and Motrin. And then after we got done with the hike, last thing about the trip, I just wanted to mention, I finally got to see an old buddy that I met in Florida, my buddy Keel, who's I met through the CrossFit gym I started at in Panama City Beach back in like 2013, and we became pretty good friends. He's about 10 years younger, so but we had the CrossFit in common, and we all just kind of hung out together as CrossFit friends. There's about a group of 5 to 10 of us that would go hit the beach after the workout or whatever. But I was hanging out with Keel quite a bit when I was in Florida, and then I transferred, and he actually joined the Navy like a year after I left Florida. And then we weren't really good about keeping in touch. You know how guys are. But he's been in now for I think 8 years, he said. And when I left Florida, he was single or dating random chicks, late 20s, early 30s. Wasn't married, no kids. So now he's married, 3 kids, living in Hawaii, and he's a diver in the Navy, and he's already E6. So he made rank pretty quickly, and super happy for him. And he's loving island life. But we just caught up on talking about Florida and stuff like that. And I just pretty much I was just asking him tons of questions about his life the last 8 years. Hopefully I can go diving with him next time I'm on Oahu, because he's a Navy diver and knows what he's doing and has all the gear. And then I'll probably have to rent my gear, but he said he's definitely down to go on some dives. So looking forward to that. So hopefully I can interview him next time on island, and we can talk about random stuff.
That's pretty late to join the Navy, right?
Yeah, I mean, when I was at boot camp, there was like a 35-year-old in our boot camp division, and I'm just thinking, like, what have you been doing with your life that makes you want to go in the Navy at 35? And
Podcasts.
a podcast didn't work out. That was before they were a thing. No, but as I've gotten older, and I'm not quick to judge with the little knowledge I have, as like I was when I was 18. But people have different things they have planned out. Maybe go to college, maybe get married, and just all goes to crap. In your mid-20s, and then, or maybe you just kind of are floating around, do some school here, working odd jobs, and then you kind of. I feel like maybe just he was around, and Keel was around enough people that were Navy, and what he heard about it, he liked what he heard, or just like the people that were hanging out with that were military. Actually, I didn't realize. That's a good question. I probably should have asked him, but he seems to like it, and he's actually hoping he can get stationed back in Florida after this tour in Hawaii. So I think he's going to have an enjoyable career living on a bunch of different coastal cities and finishing up his Navy career.
Should I join? Like, what's the cutoff? Like 38?
I think it depends on what you're like. Some officers, I guess, can go in pretty late depending on their specialty, like in the medical field or dental. I want to say cutoff is like probably, I think 38, 40. I don't know the rules anymore. I don't really care. But I mean, really, what do you have to offer the Navy?
Podcasting.
Like promoting the Navy, kind of like do podcasts to promote the Navy?
Yeah, like on-site podcasts, battlefield type stuff, underwater podcasting, whatever they need.
How are you going to do underwater podcasting?
We'll figure it out once we get there. Once we hit that, we'll figure it out.
Maybe you can go on a sub and go underwater and do podcasts underwater.
Right. You don't have to be in the water, just under the water.
Inside the water.
Well, let's make this happen. Let's see if we can't figure out a way to do a podcast on a submarine for next week.
Yeah, but let's just be clear to the listeners. You could not go in the Navy at 43, and I don't think you would actually be able to survive boot camp even in the Navy.
Well, I couldn't go into the 43-year-old anyway because I have to go back in time a year.
Yeah, okay, listeners, he's 44. He's older than everyone in our graduating class. Yeah, he was the old dude who bought cigarettes for us when we were seniors.
Mom, that never happened. Never happened.
Yeah, we were more into I don't know what we were into. That was naughty. Running on the pool deck.
Yeah, wearing Speedos.
Naughty boys. But yeah, so good close out to the trip. I got to see two people I hadn't seen in at least 6 years. Omi, who I met on island back in 06, 07, 08, and she's awesome. And she seems to be doing well. And she was actually the older lady of our group. I think when we were all in our 20s, she was already in her 30s, but she was a cool ass 30-year-old that liked hanging out with us. And she's just a really good person, really fun to be around, and was pretty adventurous. But we were joking when we were on the hike and we were all breathing heavy. I was like, man, why didn't we do this, 15 years ago when we were all younger? And she's like, well, we were kind of hungover a lot. And so we never wanted to wake up early to go on a 8 o'clock hike on a Saturday.
You visited Guam and then Oahu, and you met up with Laurel, Omi, and Keel, and you only got one interview out of those three.
I see what you're trying to get at right now, and I feel like it's a valid statement, an observation of what happened, and I feel like really didn't probably need to be brought up. So how dare you? I just didn't want to force an interview rather than just enjoy time hanging out.
And yet here I am. You make me do this every week.
Well, you're my best friend, so I'm going to force you to do a lot of stuff you don't want to do.
Ew.
Well, like
Sounds like a promise.
Right? No. Why do you've been hanging out with Laurel too much? Always implying inappropriate innuendos. I should be visiting people, at least one or two different people every week. So we might be having a lot more episodes that are hitting the streets. So audiences is plural. I don't know what different type of audiences, but the hopefully the listeners are prepared to listen to more episodes that aren't any good. Hey, you want to under promise and over deliver. All right.
Mhm.
So I'm already going to give a low expectation. And if they stick it out with us, they're gonna be happy they did. All right. Cause I think we're just going to get better and better. And just like a rocket of enjoyment is going to happen. Like Elon Musk is going to hop on and we're just going to rock it.
It's like the same the thing that you have for your love life. It hasn't worked out. Under promise, over deliver. Hasn't happened.
Well, I just started that mindset. So all my relationships have been over promise, under deliver, and then blame them. That was kind of my MO.
Lame.
Very healthy.
Playing game.
Very healthy. All right, let's move on to not making fun of me, and we'll get into our second segment. Does that sound good to you, James? So, James, on the second segment, I wanted to get into the different generations, especially since I just was talking about my friend Keel, who's 30. I'm 43. He's 34. So when I met him, yeah, there was that same age difference that I can't do the math right now. I think I was mid 30s, and he was mid 20s. So, even though he was 10 years younger than me, he still is considered in my same generation as far as those different time frames with all the different generations, baby boomers and Gen Z and all that. But I feel like even though he's 10 years younger, we were still pretty well. I was immature, so I guess we were still on the same maturity level. But I feel like he still has the mindset that our generation has, even though he's 10 years younger. And I just was going to ask you before we get into the different generations, like, have you noticed that difference, especially when it comes to like coaching sports and when we were kids, and how, coaches yelled at us and thrashed us with physical punishment if we didn't listen or get things right. And I feel like that's not something we really can do with this generation. And what are your thoughts on coaching and the different generations and how things are different now from when we were kids?
There's definitely a difference, but I also feel we're in that area of when I was your age. We've become those people a little bit. And I think every generation would be like, oh, this next generation is soft, probably since the beginning of time, I'm guessing. But there is some difference with how I'm trying to use the right word, but discipline, I guess, especially as a coach. I remember having to run and do crazy stuff that even when I have my basketball team do like sprints, or I'll have them do wall sits, I'm like, is this too much? Like, am I gonna get like an email from a parent or from the school that you can't have him do a wall sit for a minute? That's too much. Like, he has peanut allergies. You can't have him up against the wall. Um, but I don't know. There's a lot of different variables about why generations are different, and maybe we'll touch on them. But that's an interesting question. I just feel like every generation is going to think their generation was a little bit tougher, So like we might feel like we were tougher, but then our parents would be like, "You guys had it so easy," and then their parents will say the same thing. So I don't know. I don't know what the correct answer is. I guess as far as who had it tougher, who worked harder, who I don't know. I don't have the right answer, but it is tough to try to connect with the newer generation. And I definitely have a lot of empathy for the coaches that we had in the past that I kind of thought were like a-holes or didn't really like them. I mean, there's some that I still think that were, but others where I was like, man, like they were right. And like we were goofing off too much or not putting enough effort in, or,
Like herding cats. Actually, we're gonna go off segment here just for a quick question. So, who was your? I think only Buchanan listeners are gonna relate. But who was your least favorite coach? And then why? And then who was your favorite coach and why? Because I feel like if you describe one of the bad coaches, I think it'll be funny.
I'm not going to name names.
Okay, describe the coach and what he would do.
It was the person who made me dislike basketball after loving it for multiple years was our 8th grade basketball coach. He wanted to be Bobby Knight so badly, but we were just a bunch of 8th grade doofuses,
Yeah.
Decent talent on the team. We ended up, the first game we played, we ended up upsetting like the number 2 ranked middle school or whatever in our league. And then the expectations were way too high after that. And he just, I mean, he was just, in my opinion, he was just not a very good coach. He just had an attitude. He was like Bobby Knight. He threw clipboards, whistles, pens, and almost hit multiple people with them. Like, you couldn't do that now for sure. Like that's a different generation. Like if I were to throw something and almost hit a kid, my guess is they would go. And I don't work for the school. I work for the city or a rec league. A parent would email and be like, he's no longer coaching, and I would be probably removed.
Yeah.
So that was my least favorite because he made me second guess playing basketball ever again. Even going into 9th grade, I told my dad I wasn't going to play basketball and I was going to prep for the soccer team, and my dad talked me out of it. So.
Well, and it didn't help the fact that you were still only 4'8" and going into 9th grade. So you basketball was going to be tough to be competitive.
I know my dad was wrong. He was like, yes, please go play soccer. You're a little person.
Yes.
So you need to go play soccer. My favorite coach was my JV basketball coach because he was the one who actually, I thought he was really good at seeing what individual talent we had and allowing us. So like we had to obviously play within a system that was set there by the varsity coach. But he was able to take that and see. For me, I wanted to drive to the middle of the lane, dish, or shoot. And he allowed me to do that within our offense. Like every once in a while, he'd just call me over. He's like, go make a play instead of like run the offense. Right. And I had so much respect for him. And like I try to emulate that with my team. I'm like, hey, within our spacing in our offense, which we know so we don't get all jumbled up, be yourself. Like if you're a drive and dish guy, drive and dish. If you're a shooter, be ready to shoot. You don't have to make that next pass that initiates the offense. So he was my favorite. Like he would pull me aside and be like, hey man, just go do your thing. Like if things got stagnant. So yeah, I don't know. I think just connecting with the kids is probably the biggest thing. Our 8th grade coach did not. He had himself up on a pedestal, and then our JV coach was a guy who you could actually go talk to after practice and joke around with.
Yeah, a little more down to earth, and that's funny that you kind of describe it like that, because I feel like the first coach you were describing in 8th grade is just still having trouble with emotions and control of those emotions. And I get it to be passionate, and you can be passionate and maybe get a little sideways on a occasional or rare occasion, just because sometimes it is intense, and sometimes you gotta yell a bad word or something, and just to get through the intensity. But I definitely like the coaches that kind of not catered, but modified their coaching style to fit you. Like I responded well to yelling. I was used to it. So I didn't mind getting yelled at. It got my attention and I got me refocused. Some
Mhm.
people would just like get all quiet and shy and sad and not be able to perform. And, you kind of had to coach them in a more gentle manner. And with my sister and coaching flag football, I feel like she's my sister. I've known her for a while, so she's not a stranger. Like for some of these high school girls that don't know her, but I feel like they is approachable and is active communication and transparent as my sister was. Girls still complain. They were still like saying stuff, negative about her and complaining to their parents about certain stuff, and she had to deal with all that noise. And I was just like, I don't know if these girls haven't had good coaches before or what, but or I don't know if it's just because she's a female and so they're just being catty and don't think that a female knows what she's doing. And I was like, I hope it's not that, because they are females. It's like, why wouldn't you want to see a fellow female do well? But when you're immature in high school, I think there's hopefully as you get older, and I feel like that's what you kind of learn as I get older, is my assumptions when I was younger weren't as accurate as they are as getting older. And when I heard an adult say, "Oh, back in my day," but I was like, "Oh, whatever." Like you're just full of yourself. But now that I'm older, it's like they were kind of right. I mean, I
Mhm.
feel like every generation had it easier, either by just living situation, technology, advances in school as far as the curriculum, and like all the kids use iPads now. And I feel like everything's just got easier over time since, the 70s, 80s. So you didn't have to work hard. You could Google stuff instead of having to go to the library to look up stuff. And I feel like as things get easier, you get lazier, you get weaker. You don't need to be strong because you have all these avenues and all these perks of advancements in human technology, and so you can just be weaker mentally and physically.
Yeah, and I think there's an expectation that, and I think the reason why I wanted to coach my son was I had expectations for him that other coaches who wouldn't have it, and it goes for parenting too. Like I hold you to a higher standard as like than other parents might for their kids. And so I think that's where it's a slippery slope. It's like, well, if they're just here to mess around with their friends, and I deal with that almost every practice. It's like, are they here to get better? Are they here to play? Are they here to learn the game? Or are they just here to mess around and be with their friends after school? Um, so that's where I'm kind of at a crossroads. It's like, do I continue to do this because I have the expectations for these guys to be better each year, whereas they
Right.
might just want to just grab ass all year. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just have fun with
Um,
their friends. Absolutely. Uh,
yeah.
I think I know you just started your flag football, and I know we weren't really going to make this a sports edition, so I just wanted to briefly ask you about, and then we'll get straight into the generational stuff as far as what Chat GPT told us what it means. But like, how was the first week of practice with your flag football team? How'd the first game go? And I know we talked about practices and drills and stuff like that. And what I wanted to mention to you before you go into it is, if it seems like they are goofing off and not focusing on that stuff, and you almost have to do like a selling point where, hey guys, we're going to take the first half of this practice serious. We're going to work on this drill, and then afterwards we're going to scrimmage and have some challenge game or competition games or whatever. And that way they have something to look forward to. And so hopefully that can get them to focus the first half, and then know that the last 15, 20, 30 minutes is going to be, having fun. But how do you think it went for your first week, 2 weeks of flag football with your son?
I mean, we have a good group of kids. They listen. They're not super disrespectful. Like they're not running around, not listening. Um, I feel like I'm at a disadvantage because I didn't play football growing up, especially this form of football. I don't know 6-on-6. There's rules that I'm still like learning and trying to figure out. So I feel like a little bit of a disadvantage. Whereas with my basketball coaching, it's like I have so much experience and time and playing and still playing basketball and understanding the evolution of the game. Whereas this game, I'm like, ooh, I'm kind of learning with them. So they've
Right.
been great at practice.
Here it
It's
comes. They're great at practice, but the game, they shit the
Well,
bed.
they're good at practice, and then when the game comes, it's me trying to get them focused for the game. And it wasn't a bad game, honestly. We played an 8th grade team. We're all 7th graders, and we lost 7-2. And I looked at the other standings and the teams that won, and I think they beat the teams by more than this, but I think you cap out at 42 points. Like they don't go any higher than that.
Right.
And so those teams won 42-0 against. So it's the 3 top guys, the first 2 won 42-0 or whatever it was. It might have been higher than that. And then the 3rd place team, we lost to by 5 points. And then it's us and then the 2 teams that lost by 42. So it wasn't a bad game, but we didn't score. We had the only plays we had were like these crazy Hail Marys to our guy who's like 6'1". We have like a 6'1" guy. We'll just throw it up to. But we're not dinking and dunking. We're not looking for the short little underneath plays.
Yeah.
So that's me. They're fine. Like a lot of the guys haven't played in a league before. The ones that have played, they played for their middle school, and it's different rules. So we're learning rules.
Yeah.
But it's a learning experience for me too, where it's in basketball. Like I can always learn. Like you can always learn as a coach, but I have a lot of knowledge for basketball, whereas football, like I don't know, just run out and then go left, and then you just hit him left, but don't throw it to the defense. I mean, that's my knowledge of flag football. So,
Well, I think you're giving yourself a little discredit or talk. I mean, you've watched football your whole life, and
yeah,
I feel like you have enough knowledge of how traditional tackle football is, and it is actually a challenge. You could be like an expert on football, traditional college and pro, and it's not the same sport. I'm telling you, it's almost like baseball and softball. Yeah, they both have bats, they both have a ball, but pitching overhand and underhand is, I think, a completely different game. And I think that's the only comparable same sport, girls and guys same sport, is softball and baseball, and how it's not really the same, but it's very close. And I think flag football is kind of the same thing. Like it's a completely different game, and tackle, you don't have 6 receivers that are on the line, right? You have ineligible receivers. So it's definitely a different mindset with limited blocking. And so it's a completely different game. So even though you say you don't know anything, you know enough about traditional football with routes and just kind of like short plays, long plays, and just adding in some of the razzle dazzle with pitching the ball and doing other things that flag football allows. And me and my sister were playing the learning game last year. I've never coached. I've played flag football, but I've never coached. So I think you made a good point. Like you should always be learning, even if you think you know tons about basketball. I'm sure you're learning different situations and different, making mistakes as coaches just to become better coaches. So yeah, I think it's going to be a learning process this year, and if you don't completely hate it, maybe you'll go back and even be a better coach next year. But I think it sounds like you got kids that are that are coachable, and I think that's the big challenge with this generation is, are they coachable? Do they listen? Do they think they know everything? And are they not mean people to their fellow teammates? Just little things like that, where I don't think it's just sports that we're teaching these kids. It's more being good humans and being a good teammate, and being okay not knowing something and being in their out of their comfort zone and trying new things. And I've never been quarterback, or I've never been a receiver, or I've never been a running back. Like, well, why don't we try it, see how you do? And they might be horrible. A lot of them are horrible, and you got to just find the right position for them. So that's enough of my flag football tangent. Let's
well, to go back to generational things. So we have like the arm sleeve, right? So that's something we never had when we were playing. I played flag football for my middle school or elementary school, 6th grade and 7th grade. We never had that. So we had to like learn the plays, remember the plays. These kids, it's like right on their arm. So it kind of goes back to the whole generational thing. Like, oh, they got these, and I'm just yelling out a number, and they're still like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, well, look at the color. That's you.
Yeah.
Just do exactly what the color does. And they're still not doing it. And it's like, is it bad coaching, or are they just not invested, or they don't understand it yet? I mean, there's a lot of different variables, and I don't coach for high school. Like you kind of have, I mean, it's a double-edged sword, I guess. You're coaching for high school, so you can pick your team, but you also have a lot of responsibility with like the parents are expecting their kids to play. Whereas I'm doing rec, so I take the kids who pay to play, and then I can kind of like play them. I have to play them all a certain amount, so I don't have to choose who gets to play more. You know what I mean? So like, I don't really get that parent, like my kid should be playing. Well, it's like, well, everybody has to play the same.
Yeah.
So even if I would love for my starting quarterback to play the whole game, he can't. So it's kind of like I wish I was doing high school basketball, more basketball, not football, because then I could pick my team. I can cut guys who don't really want to be there. But then I also have that expectation of like, well, my son made the team. Like, why aren't you playing him more? Because I don't have to play everybody the same. I don't know. It's there's a lot of different variables, like I said, of why things I think work and don't work. And it's, do you want to put the time in to try to figure out how to make all those things work? And for basketball, I've been doing it for a few years. Football, honestly, I think I'd rather just watch. I like this watching the sport more probably than coaching.
Absolutely.
But I also have an expectation for my son and my daughter to like learn the sport. So when I see that other coaches aren't really teaching them things, which has happened in the past, and that's why I've kind of had to do it, or I felt like I needed to. So
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I'm not a parent, but watching Zach, my sister's youngest, at 10 play flag football, it's fun to watch. But I can't imagine herding those cats and trying to teach them flag. I don't know if I could have my patience, because they're not mature enough to like talk about stuff with reason and comprehend complex stuff, complex plays, and they're just easily distracted, easier frustrated. So I definitely enjoy just watching the younger youth play. I don't really have any interest in coaching 12 and under.
all right, so this podcast went a little long, so we're going to cut it into 2 podcasts. Jake, I'll see you on the other side.
See you there.